First of all, Father Max, tell me how you are feeling. What was that moment like when you saw now Pope Leo walk out onto the balcony at the Vatican?
Oh, it was very exciting. I heard the name Prevost very clearly. I didn't catch the Leo part at first, but when I heard Prevost said, I slapped my desk. I said, Prevost, it's Prevost. Oh my gosh. And I screamed. So I was very excited. And then to see him come out on the balcony was absolutely surreal. And it's still surreal. I haven't really processed it yet.
I can't imagine. Tell me about him. You know him. Tell me about your history with him and tell me about what you know about him.
So famously, now Leo the 14th, he was a prior general of the Order of St. Augustine for 12 years. He did two 6-year terms. So that's like the number one Augustinian around the world. He served in that capacity. When I was entering the order, that's what he was. He was the prior general. So I knew him in that sense and in that context. That's what's brought him to San Diego many times to celebrate Mass here at St. Augustine High School. After he stepped down from being prior general when his terms were over, he moved to Chicago, his hometown. And that's when I was a first year seminarian coming into the seminary. And so he was my director for about 4 months before he was ultimately called to be a bishop in Peru, which is when he, of course, went down to Peru, and he's been down there and then in Rome since.
Tell me what you remember of him from your time in Chicago.
He's very much himself. He's exactly the same guy on the balcony as I saw at the breakfast table. And I'd be just reading the newspaper, eating cereal with him, talking about the news of the day, whatever's happening. He's a White Sox fan. He loves baseball. He's been to I think it was the 2005 World Series, Game One that they won. So he's a diehard White Sox fan. He's a very intelligent man. He's a canon lawyer by trade, of course. So he knows his stuff. He's very, very impressive. But he's diplomatic as well. You know, being a prior general of the order, he has a great international sense of the church around the world, different cultures, different realities. I think being a missionary priest also, he knows people in their suffering. You know, he was in very poor areas in Peru serving there. So he has a shepherd's heart.
You're giving me a visual of you sitting at a breakfast table with him talking about the day's news and that he's a Chicago White Sox fan. Tell me about his demeanor. I mean, you listen, it's sort of a big deal that we have an American Pope, right? So we're trying to learn everything we can about who he is as a man. What can you share about what you know about him as a human being, his personality? Tell me a little bit about that.
He kind of always runs the same way. His personality is very much the same. Even at one point, he told us he doesn't take days off in a sense. A lot of priests will take, say, Monday off or Thursday off, and we say, well, what's your day off? What do you do? He said, I don't recommend it to you guys, but I don't really take days off. He's kind of always on, and he's very famous for, if you email him, he replies incredibly quickly. And I emailed him on an unrelated topic about 8 months ago. I had a question on something from our Augustinian constitutions. I said, well, why is this way? And he helped rewrite them. So I knew kind of he was the expert to go to. And he replied within half an hour. And, you know, I'm writing this kind of a cold email, writing a cardinal of the church. And I know I have a connection to him, but it's still a big deal to be sending him an email. And then right away, this long, thoughtful email where he fully kind of gave me the history on my question and why it was the way it was. So it wasn't just a dismissive or a quick like yes or no. It was a very thoughtful email that he put together to respond to the question I had asked him.
Max, I mean, just saying that we have a pope that knows how to email seems like a big deal.
I'm sure his email box is filling up right now incredibly rapidly. Yeah.
So not
As
only,
is mine
I mean,
is
not
right
only,
now too.
not only do I mean, now you're telling me he emails. I mean, I see him on Twitter, now X. I mean, he seems to be more of a modern man, especially given the history of what we've seen of popes.
Yeah, he's very Augustinian. You know, Augustine is Lord, let me know myself that I may know you. And our training as Augustinians is about coming to know ourselves as we are, warts and all, problems and all. And if God can handle us as we are, then we should be able to handle us as we are. And so I think through his Augustinian training, going through the seminary and the training that he would have gone through, he just has a good sense of who he is and also who he's not. He's not trying to be someone else that he's not. He was, like I said, very much the same man on the balcony that I knew back in Chicago.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about being an Augustinian and what that means in the now role of the Pope. What does being an Augustinian? I know the Augustinians are missionaries. I know you focus on poverty. I know you focus on sort of outreach. And he even said that when he addressed everyone at St. Peter's today. He sort of talked about building a bridge. The church under him will be building a bridge. Tell me what that means in the context of how we understand it as Americans, because I think there's a difference between how American Catholics receive that message and how global Catholics receive that message.
Yeah, that's one of the titles of the Pope, right? Pontifex Maximus, right? The great bridge builder. And that made sense to me when he talked about building bridges. He's someone who listens very well. He's very perceptive, but I don't really consider him to be ideological in the sense that he would never outright reject somebody just on the surface. He's going to listen to what everyone has to say. He might have his own opinion about it, but he's going to listen to everyone around the table. I think being a religious and being an Augustinian helps him with that. We also have great centers of education that we lead. So Villanova University is one of our schools. We have 10 high schools across the US and Canada, and we have lots of other schools around the world. So the pursuit of education is something that is very much at the heart of our order as well. And it's something that he obviously lived out in his Augustinian life.
I think, given the world we see right now, especially, and the uncertainty we see around the world when it comes to, especially in this country, immigration, when we talk about what, the hotspots that are boiling up all around the world, how do you see the man you knew handling that as now head of a church of 1.4 billion Catholics?
I think people are going to try and put him in boxes, right? And we're trying to put him always, everyone's trying to, well, is he going to be like this or like that? And that's going to be putting him in the box. And I hope that in the name of Leo, he's going to be unboxable in that sense. Lions, we know they can roar, but they don't have to roar in order to be heard in that same sense. So we'll see how Leo the lion takes on people who are going to try and pigeonhole him in certain ways. I don't think he's going to be someone who gets pigeonholed at all.
I know he was close to Pope Francis. Pope Francis moved him into certain roles on purpose, clearly because of what you're saying, his history, his education, his knowledge, his ability to speak to people, and his ability to speak multiple languages, all of these things. So I'm wondering, I think a lot of Catholics and a lot of people just that are non-Catholics are wondering, is he, and I know you're saying he's not boxable, but are you seeing him? Do you believe that he is going to be the type of Pope that is going to continue on the mission that Pope Francis undertook? Or do you think he is going to be more of what conservatives would say, sort of pulling back that progressiveness that we saw under the last Pope?
It's an interesting question. I think he has a lot in common with Pope Francis. It's not going to be like a total split at all. Someone said to me, he dressed like Benedict on the balcony, but he spoke like Francis, and so he's going to take on different parts of previous popes whom we know, and he's going to make that somehow his own. And he's not going to fit in really well with anybody's definition of who they think he should be. He's going to be himself, and taking on the name Leo, I think will point to that. And we'll see how he grows into it, and give him some time. We'll see what his first gestures are.
Yeah.
That'll be really important to kind of signal where it is that he wants to lead the church. I think the church will be a bit more calm as well, for lack of a better term. Francis liked to kind of shake things up for the sake of shaking things up. I don't think he's going to be like that at all. It's not that nothing's ever going to change, but it's that he's going to lead it very purposefully, and not so much in the way of Francis was always making surprises for everyone. And I think he's going to be a little bit more thoughtful, and that will come from his background as a canon lawyer. He cares about procedure. He cares about, kind of following how things are laid out. And that's not something he's just going to dismiss and say, well, the rules say this, but I'm going to do that. No, he cares deeply about what the rules are and how they're written. He rewrote our constitutions some years ago. And so they're very, very thoughtful in that way.
I was looking at his his X account, which, by the way, he was posting in April. So it's not like, this was like a relic. So I was looking at his posts on X, and the most recent ones, quite frankly, were about immigration and the sort of the teachings of the church of, loving thy neighbor and not making a hierarchy of those who you choose to love. And that is not how the church teaches things. So I'm wondering, that seemed to be very bold, sort of a bold statement. And I'm wondering, do you think that's going to get, just because he would be Pope, do you think those kind of bold statements will be dialed back? Or do you think he's not going to be afraid to keep doing things like that in the name of his mission and how he sees the church moving forward?
Well, by the fact that he was posting what he was posting means he wasn't afraid to post.
Right.
I know under Francis, there's always the Pontifex handle on X it's a handler that's running it, right? We'll have to see. Maybe there'll be times where sometimes, when they sign their name, we might have an actual post that comes from Leo himself, and like it's actually from his phone or whatever it might be.
Right.
So yeah, I think he's definitely someone who pays attention to the world. He's very dialed in. Someone who's paying attention to what's out there. He's not. Sometimes in studies you have people in academia that are detached from everything in the ivory tower. He's not an ivory tower guy. He's boots on the ground guy. He knows the reality of what's going on, what's happening.
I think there is a lot of question in the church about the role of women and the role of, I know Pope Francis was really sort of one of the first to really sort of try and include the LGBTQ plus community. And I'm wondering, as an Augustinian and in his speech today, was very vocal about everybody is welcome. I am wondering, do you believe that the church under now Pope Leo will continue that effort to move these women, the LGBT community, more into the church?
Well, I think it's always about meeting people where they are and then leading them through grace and ultimately to redemption and to salvation. So it's kind of what's the first move if you encounter someone on the street or encounter someone who's suffering, in some way you have to relate to them and meet them on their terms. Do you leave them where they are? Hopefully, no. Any good friend with time makes you a better person. And so I think he's going to model a church that does that meets people where they are, yes, but ultimately then journeys with them to profound grace and ultimately redemption, conversion, maturity, whatever it is that person needs to go through. So we'll see how he directs the church and tries to lead the church in that way. But I think he's always going to be a pope of dialogue and meeting with people where they are.
I want to ask about what you think some of his big challenges are going to be as a pope and in this crazy world that we're in right now. What kind of challenges do you expect that he's going to have to start dealing with pretty quickly?
So, of course, he went through this and becoming an Augustinian, not knowing everything that would mean, becoming a priest, not knowing everything that would mean, agreeing to become a bishop, not knowing everything that would mean, agreeing to become a cardinal, not knowing everything that would mean. Now he's agreed to become the Holy Father. And note, when he came on the balcony, he had the red garment on, and the red represents sacrifice. It represents sacrifice.
That? Yes. What does that mean?
It's blood. It's sacrifice. He's agreed to take on this cross for the church out of humility, not because he wants to carry it, but because he's been asked to carry it. And that is what you want ultimately in a leader. You don't want the leader who wants to be the leader for the sake of glory or anything like that. Right. You want the leader that the team looks to and says, "You're our leader, lead us out on the field," right? And I think he's going to be that kind of leader for the church. He's going to kind of say, well, you guys picked me to do this, and now I'll go in and be the lead. He's done that with the Augustinians, being our prior general for 12 years. That's his brothers, promoting him to being our prior general. And he took on that mantle of leadership, and he's taken on leadership as a priest, as a bishop, as a cardinal. Now he's taking on as a pope.
And do you think it is significant that his brother cardinals have selected an American? I feel like in the church, I never thought that I would see the day that there would be an American Pope. I mean, does that say something about the way the American Catholic Church has evolved in the eyes of the global church?
I don't think it says so much about the American Catholic Church. I think it speaks a lot about the Church of the Americas.
Oh,
The line in Italy was always, he's the least American of the Americans. And that's
precisely.
what kind of made him palatable to everybody. So yes,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
American, yes, but he's a very international figure in that way, being an Augustinian, being a religious, being a bishop, being a missionary priest. So he didn't come with that same baggage of the American church. He spent most of his priesthood outside of the United States.
Right.
I think people are going to be thrilled with him. I think he's going to be a fantastic pope. But again, I don't put him in a box and allow him to just kind of roll these things out on his terms, and we'll journey with him as he leads the church.